evening. My name is Randall McShepard, and in my spare time, I work for a company called RPM International Incorporated as Vice President of Public Affairs. But for the sake of this summer, I spent a lot of time working with my co-chair, Mary Danahan, on the Public Engagement Committee for the county transition effort. And I'll get into a bit more of what our charge is and what we hope to accomplish. But at this time, I would like to ask at least another couple committee members that are here to stand or wave so that our folks can see you. Debbie, Linda, and Ray. So we will jump right into the program. And if I can, already I'm excited. Okay, so this is the agenda for this evening's program. After my very brief opening remarks, I'm going to talk a little bit about the purpose of the public forums. We will then hear from two work groups, the Economic Development Work Group and the Human Capital Quality Places Work Group. We will then open it back up for questions and answers, and we really would encourage you to formulate your questions as you hear comments being shared throughout the presentation. And we will then wrap up and have you out of here as soon as you'd like. We always like to take 30 seconds to talk about the perspective. This is a big deal, the fact that we are embarking upon what we think is the grandest civic education project of our lifetimes. We always say this, it's only once every 200 years that we reform county government, so we don't take it lightly, and we hope that you don't take it lightly either, and I think that's why you're here. So what has been the purpose of these public forums that we've had? We think these three bullets sum it up quite well. First of all, we think it's important that we educate the community on the status of the county transition process. I don't know if our two speakers tonight would suggest that they're totally done with the work of their work groups, but they certainly want to give you an update on what they're doing. And I think they're working to be done sometime toward the end of the month, maybe into okay, early the following month, I was going to suggest. But it's near. The end is near. Secondly, we certainly want to entertain questions and comments from you, the public. This isn't just a one-sided conversation. We hope that you share your not only questions, but any comments and thoughts that you'd like to impart with us. And then thirdly, it is our responsibility to take back, as well as our speakers' responsibilities, to take back your recommendations and your comments to their respective work groups so that they can hear what members of the public feel about their presentations and the course that we've taken so far. So just to show you how hard we've worked this summer, you see a list of public forums that we've already either hosted or a few more that we will host. I guess we have two more after tonight. We have a Hispanic forum next week at 5:30 at La Sagrada Familia Church on the near west side of Cleveland. And then our final forum will take place September 13th at the Stokes Library. Debbie, you will be proud to see that it does say 4 o'clock, which is the right start time for that. And we really have been excited. I do believe there will be evaluation forms. Are those here? Okay. I do want to ask you to promise to complete a very basic one-page exit survey that basically asks 4 or 5 questions. We really want to gauge how well we're doing with this process. Are you getting the kind of information that you need? Are there recommendations or suggestions that you would have for how we can improve the process? It really will only take 30 seconds. You'll hear me remind you of this at least 3 times. So when those are passed out, please quickly fill it out and drop it in the box as you exit. So with that, and without further ado, I think we can move into our presentations. And I do believe first up is Mr. Trotter, who will talk about our Economic Development Work Group. Mr. Trotter was a long-term senior official with Cuyahoga County, and he thinks he retired 6 months ago or so, but I think he's been pretty much coming in on a regular basis to help with the Economic Development Committee. And he will be followed by Lana Coleman, who is a real champion of human capital in Northeast Ohio and has fought for those causes for many years, a successful entrepreneur, and you'll hear from him after Mr. Trotter. So please, Lee, if you'd come forward. Thank you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. As Mr. McShepard indicated, my name is Lee Trotter, and I'm one of the three tri-chairs, tri-chairs of the Economic Development Work Group, and I decided I better show you who the other two are, because all of the things you will not like about tonight's presentation is their responsibility. I'm only here representing the positive attributes for this particular committee. And with me also is Thomas Fitzpatrick, who is sitting in for Sandy Pianalto, the president of the Cleveland Federal Reserve Bank. She's unable to be here with us. I think there's a minor economic crisis brewing in the rest of the country as well. So what do we want to do today? We want to sort of bring you up to date with what's been going on with the Economic Development Committee. And we start by sort of looking at the charter. And we will review the charter language to sort of get a handle on what it actually said, so that everybody is not confused about what our mission is. You know, it's often like getting on that airplane where the stewardess every time mentions that this flight is going to Las Vegas, and in case there's somebody that thought they were going to Las Vegas or something like that. And the reason for that is what the charter says and what a lot of people think we're doing is not the same thing. We are not collecting a pile of money to give to anybody to spend on projects that are going to turn this from a wasteland into a garden of economic opportunity, joy, and happiness, and of course a second job for me. That's not what's going to happen. So we're going to review the charter language so that we clearly understand that. Then we're going to discuss the draft mission and objectives of the Economic Work Group Committee. We're going to try and summarize what we believe are the common issues that would help move the charter's expectations and anticipations forward. And then we'll discuss those core issues that are serving as really the framework for the report that the Economic Workforce Task Force is trying to create for us. And then we'll discuss the work group's plan. And here is one of those things that we want to read very carefully, because as we read the charter, we were a little bit left for want of a better term, a clear expression of how do we do this. And when you read it, based on the charter, the preamble of Article 7, which is the one addressing economic development, a committee for economic development will study and recommend mechanisms to enable Cuyahoga County to enhance its economic development efforts. I want to focus on the term mechanism, because that's not a sexy thing. It is not what we're not going to be talking about wind turbines or building new plants in places that are not now buildable. We're going to be talking about how do we get the structure of county government to really address and embrace and execute fundamentally well the mechanisms of making economic development a reality. And why is that a desire? Because they wanted to improve the county's economic competitiveness in a fast-growing global economy with a focus on treating job creation and economic growth as a fundamental government purpose. Now, here's another nuance to our chart. Many of us did not know, but the county has never had as a fundamental charge its economic development role. It has assumed that as a passive and a stopgap measure, but it was never a charge for the county to do that. Now, people will say, well, why not? Because the county is a creation of the state government, and the state government never delegated economic development as a primary responsibility to counties, period. Only counties that have their own charter, Summit County being the first and only right now, on January 1st, 2011, Cuyahoga County will join them. So, as you might suspect, we did a lot of gnashing of our hands and sort of calling people and saying, well, what do you do? How do counties do economic development? What's going on? And so we came up with some, what we believe are guiding principles and objectives for our project. And one of them, the first one being that we would study and recommend mechanisms to enable the counties attainment of its mission, because we want to spur sustainable job and economic growth for the county. We want to synchronize across all of the county's public activities a sort of public-private and nonprofit relationship that works well and coordinated. And we want to have transparency so that when we're using county resources to target opportunities, that everyone will have an idea, one, what are we doing, why are we doing it, and what are the expectations coming out of that. And then we want to optimize the benefits of economic development for the entire county. That is an issue that I think is a little difficult to do all of the time, because there will not be a in-step kind of development in every community of the county. There will be some leading and lagging, but we want people who are lagging to know when their turn is going to come and what activities will address them. Those who are leading, we want them to understand the need to help make certain that others get the same benefit. And then we found that aligning county economic development activities, planning, workforce development, and other activities, funding, ports, and things like that, is a fundamental requirement for getting all of the county's assets working in a collaborative and effective manner toward enhancing our economic development opportunities. Our group was developed from a list of about 400. We limited to 30 people who actually serve on the committee, and of that, we finally decided that since there was such a great clamor to be involved in economic development, that almost every meeting would be an open public committee meeting, work meeting, so that everyone had a chance to have input, express themselves, give ideas, and criticize and also applaud us. We didn't get many applause, but we did get the criticism, and we appreciated that, and that's helped us move forward. And so those volunteers, and that's the reason we chose 30, is that we wanted to get a mixture of temperament, of expertise, a diversity of age, and a diversity of ideas, both manufacturing and retail and commercial, so that every specter of the economic spectrum would be represented, and we could hear from everyone. We included public officials who were not in the county government, but therefore had some ideas on how their communities might want to respond to that. So what have we accomplished to date? It seems like only yesterday that we were looking at thinking about a survey to sort of solicit the public's input. So the first thing we did is created a survey so that those who had expressed an interest but were not able to either attend meetings or not selected for the group of 30 or couldn't do other things that we were trying to do could share their opinions with us up front. And that sort of served as a template or as a laundry list of things that we for sure wanted to make certain that we addressed in our works and deliberation. We established work groups with expertise that was focused on specialized work areas, such as what does a vibrant business community require in order to identify a particular community as a favorite place to go and start a business or to stay and grow a business. We got lots of ideas on that. We also looked into how certain other communities around the country have gone from sort of a laggard kind of position to a stellar leading position. And unfortunately, we had to take a trip across the border of Ohio into the state of Pennsylvania, into the county of Allegheny, into the city of Pittsburgh, and figure out how did they do what they're doing now. And we found that they had an epiphany some years ago and began to restructure their whole county government with a focus on building jobs, economic prosperity, and also enhancing and improving their education. All of those things seem to have a resounding impact around the country. We then traveled not too far from here down to Summit County because they've been there, done that, and we just wanted to get an idea from them on how that happened. We also invited people from academia who came in and discussed with us best practices and ideas that help make a vibrant community more vibrant, and also directs its attention to the things that really need to be paid attention to. And then, of course, we brought in other politicians from different communities to talk about the political side of this. That is, how do you make certain that the public treasury is not thrown open to every developable idea in the community. So we researched all of those, and then we reviewed models of economic development, and then finally we wanted to coordinate our work with other transition work groups. We're now in that phase. I think almost all of the transition work groups are coming to a point now where we can actually talk to our counterparts about ideas that we have that we think are going to be leading elements of our final report. It wasn't me. I'm glad. And now we're looking at all of those elements so that we can wind up with a report that not only restructures county government in terms of an economic development activity, but is extraordinarily friendly and vibrant for businesses to come, stay, grow, and enhance themselves. And we've found some priority areas, and I don't think they're a secret to anybody here. One of the things we know we have to concentrate on is the ability to do redevelopment. Why? Because this is basically a fully developed county. We only have one non-incorporated community, happens to be Olmsted Township. And so everything is taken. So if we're going to grow and enhance and improve, we're going to have to redevelop what we have. Some of which is tainted by industrial pollution, other is tainted by the fact that it's not large enough, too many subdivisions of land, so you can't do things for major activities, and some of it just is overlooked. We also need to get a strong, focused effort on business attraction. We need to concentrate some of our resources clearly on retention, and finally, helping people grow what they have. Innovation and entrepreneurship is going to be key, we believe, in the new county efforts, primarily because innovation comes from research, research comes from the brain, brain comes from having quality educational opportunities in academic pursuits. We found that in the last, and all is not poor in this area, we might add, in looking at research grant dollars coming into the community, we find that in the last 10 years we've gone from about a $400 million annual research flow in the community, and now we're talking Northeast Ohio, up to about $1 billion as we stood in 2009. So in spite of all that has been bad, we have been adding more capability and capacity to the cupboard so that we'll have something to draw down on and begin to build a resurgence in terms of our economic vitality. And education and research are key to that. I believe this is the slide that says that's a summary of what we've done, what we think the outcomes and reality should be. We have posted all of our work products on the internet at the county's website. We've got some pretty fancy studies that are there that show you how all of this activity will mesh in gears and what leads and what drives and what the output is. And we're going to wrap that up, we hope, into a coherent summary that the community will be able to view in a couple of weeks. And hopefully it'll be readable and it won't be too long, and it will have the essence of what we really believe is a help aid for the new government coming in January to begin to look at economic development as a primary or an equal major requirement for county government. We will take, we will not take. Later, okay. So that pretty much completes my presentation for this afternoon, and I'll be around as they tell me what else to do. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, or should I say good evening? Good. My name is Lana Coleman. Let me see where these arrows are. There we go. I got it. My name is Lana Coleman, and I'm one of the co-chairs of the Human Capital Quality Places Work Group, along with Sharon Sobel Jordan and Harry Kennard, who's in government relations with the county. And I have to start off by saying that I didn't know that much about our county before I became one of the co-chairs of the committee, outside of the fact that as I involved my business with the county, usually I'd go down to the county and I'm looking at certain specific things that related to the business that I have. And outside of that, you know, the county, we know the county, you know, perform various services and different things of that nature. But I have to tell you now that I know so much about our county, I really hate to see it change. But I know it's all for the good. It's all for the good. Okay, but the charge of the Human Capital Quality Places Work Group, we looked at 3 ways that we can possibly have an effect on what's going to take place within the government. Then how we look at the old government and whether, you know, positive or negative, how we can do things to affect some change with our recommendations to the new county exec and the new county council. So the first thing was we came up with the charge of creating opportunities for people to contribute. Now, as human capital, we looked at the attraction and the retention of the talent in the county. You know, too many times we hear about the brain loss that we have here with our young people. We wanted to look at ways that we can retain that talent and keep that talent here. We have a number of universities in the city that are graduating some really, really wonderful people. We want to be able to retain that talent in the area or in this county. We wanted to look at our businesses. What's going on at the county that may affect our small businesses and our entrepreneurs in a negative or a positive way. You know, we want to keep all of the positives, but if there are negative things out there that are impeding the growth and the development of our small businesses, we wanted to look at that and see how we can affect some change to the positive if it needed that. Do we need a business ombudsman? Do we need a one-stop business center at our county? We looked at those types of things in our work group and looked to see how they can affect something more positive as we move forward. And the second charge was to create opportunities for people to participate. Now, this is very important for us. What are we doing currently to develop the people in our community to be able to gain a job? What are we doing to raise the educational level of our county residents to participate in the new economy, whether it's green jobs or, you know, what have you? We wanted to look at those things, and we wanted to make sure, as we looked across the county government and what they're doing, that there's something in there that we can do to bring about some inclusion. We looked at the charge from a racial and economic inclusion standpoint, because we want to make sure that as we move forward in the new day, that all of our residents in the county, no matter what social, economic, am I not broadcasting? Okay. No matter what racial or economic background, that they have the ability to be able to participate in what's taking place in the county. And then the third charge was quality places to live, work, and play. We feel that everyone is entitled to have, you know, a quality place to live, to work, to play. We looked at housing, what's taking place with our housing. We looked at foreclosure prevention, land use and planning, and transportation. And transportation is really important because we have to get people to the jobs. And without transportation, in many cases, you just can't do it. There are a number of residents in this county that don't own cars. They have to tie themselves or align themselves with the transportation system, so they're at the mercy of the system. So if the buses are not going out to where the jobs are, then we're going to have many of our residents of our county not being able to get or retain some meaningful employment. And that's not a good thing. So we're looking at that as well. Now, the approach that we took to compile our deliverables is we asked ourselves, what is the current role of county government? And so we looked into what the current government is doing, and we were looking to see if there were some things in there that we can identify and to put out to our group to have some discussions around so that we can bring about some change. Is it a positive thing? We want to keep that. If it's a negative thing, how do we change that? Then we wanted to know who was in charge of the different agencies or the different groups in the county, and whether or not those agencies or groups were doing a great job, or do we view it as something that can be done differently? Do we need to align this agency or group with another agency or group to make it a little better? We were looking for redundancy because one of the things that we wanted to do is to try and remove redundancy, out of the mix. The second step was, what are our options for possible future roles for county government? We wanted to go out and identify best practices from outside of the county, and as I get further into the slides, you'll see some of the counties that we had conversations with, and we wanted to identify their best practices and bring them into the mix as well, and see how we can apply it to our county. Now, that doesn't say that there are not some things that we're doing pretty good, and we recognize some of the things that our county is doing and has been recognized for as a best practice as well. And then we come to the third step is, what do we recommend? And that's where right now we're at on the Human Capital and Quality Places Transition Work Group, is the recommendations. As we had mentioned earlier, September 3rd is when our recommendations go and get turned into the Economic Development Committee. I think you guys are the ones that we're referring all of our recommendations to. Now, what I've posted is our timeline. We started meeting back in June 3rd, and we've had a number of meetings up until last week. Last week we did our 5 work days in 5 sessions, and we called that the 5-day road trip. And what we did is we covered a number of subjects in that 5 days, and we spent a whole day with our work group, talking about that session. And I've got some information further in the slides that we'll talk about. But the key part of this slide here is the solicitation of community input. That's very important. I mean, this government is your government. We need your input. And so to that end, we posted a survey on the website where we could get as much input from the citizenry in the county as we possibly could. And we put, with our survey, we asked a number of questions that dealt with the human capital and the quality places portion of this. And we, when we had our last meeting, I think we had about 268 responses. Well, 2 meetings ago, we had 268 responses. But in a week's time, we had over 1,000 responses to our survey that was out on the website, which we thought was really, really, really wonderful. And it gave us a lot of information so that we could follow on through in our deliberations. Now, we've done some research, and our findings were presented June 28th and July 13th. And we had a couple sessions to go through that. What is the current role of the county government? What other sources of funding are coming into the county, borders from other governmental bodies, and to identify the best practices of county governments from around the country. So what we did was, with all of the information, we also looked at the current view of the 2010 budget of the county. We broke it down into the commissioner and the agencies, the elected officials, the boards and commissions. We went through this, and this is where we were looking for the redundancies or any idea that we could come up with to make it a little better. And then we come up with some ideas, in looking at the budget, and then as we looked at the various agencies, there were some things that we really wanted to look for that we felt would make a difference with the new government. And that was the attraction and retainage of the talent. We looked at small business and entrepreneurship. And this was key here because we know in economic development, Lee's group is looking at the 30,000-foot level. And then when you talk about mom and pops, small business entrepreneurs, the little guys, many times there's a tendency to leave them out. We wanted to make sure in our group that they didn't get left out. And we had asked Lee if he would come and attend one of our sessions when we were talking about economic development on that level, so that he would be able to take back to the major group the concerns that we had when it came to mom and pops, startups, small businesses, and the entrepreneurship that's created in that environment. We also looked at the preparation to compete for jobs. What are we doing in workforce development and those types of things, because that's very important. There's a lot of agencies out here in the county. The city does it, this city does it, that city does it, the county does it. There are a lot of people doing workforce development. There are a lot of dollars in there. And we were looking at that as to how can we eliminate some of those redundancies. And so I can tell you that that's going to be one of the topics that come forth when we make our recommendations. We're also looking at racial and economic inclusion. We think racial and economic inclusion is very important as we move forth in what we do. Too many times people have been left out, and we don't think that is a good thing. If we're going to start anew with a new county government, we want to make sure that it's inclusive of all the people in our community. We want to make sure that everybody has the ability to participate. We looked at neighborhood development. We think neighborhoods are very important to our city, to our ways of life, and the quality places that we live in. And then we looked at Cleveland as being the vibrant urban core of this whole process, because it's the major city that's sitting here in the county. And when we go out of town, when I go out of town, I live in Solon, but I don't say I live in Solon. I'm from Cleveland. And so we look at Cleveland as the as a vibrant urban core in the final analysis. Then we looked at other sources coming into the county's borders and funding, from the federal, the state, and then from foundations as well, and see how that played out with the monies that the county had to work with. And we also looked at the fact that a lot of dollars were going to different agencies, and we were wondering how might we be able to align some of that with what the county is doing to eliminate some of the redundancies and maybe take some of the dollars and put them better use. Most of the time when you're talking about foundations, they're pretty specific as to where their dollars are going to go. And we know you can't do a lot of things there. But the city of Cleveland has money for certain things. The county has money for the same things. And we're just trying to look at how we can put some of this together and maybe do something a little different, maybe do more with the dollars that we have to operate with. And it's all about strategically aligning those funds to the purposes or the goals. We looked at the state funding, and as you can see in my graph, Ohio spent $3.4 billion in Cuyahoga County in fiscal year 2009 for education, general government, health and human services, and the likes. Cuyahoga County government received approximately $557 million in 2009 and has budgeted $535 million for fiscal year 2010. And we were looking at some of the ways that we could break those dollars down and see what their purpose is for. Again, once again, looking for redundancies and where maybe we can make some recommendations as to something differently that can be done with some of the dollars that they have to work with. We also looked at foundation funding. I was surprised at the amounts of dollars that the foundations were contributing within our county and to make it a better place. But as I said, the foundations are really pretty specific as to where their dollars are going and what they're doing with them. But we do have a large amount of dollars coming into our county from the foundations. The Cleveland Foundation being the leader with $48 million into the county in the tune of 548 grants. United Way of Greater Cleveland, which we all know, the George Gunn Foundation, the St. Luke's Foundation, the Burger Foundation, and since I read one, I better read them all. The Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, the Alcoa Foundation, and the Roy Hunt Foundation. And once again, to look where we can strategically connect and align the funding to achieve some of the goals we would like to see take place here in our county. Now, as I mentioned earlier, here are some of the counties that we researched that are doing some things, and they have some best practices out there. And we even drilled down even further into some of these counties where we were looking at some of the good things that they were doing. Cook County, they're working with the city of Chicago to do some really positive things for community needs. We looked at the Fulton and DeKalb County. They're working county to county to take care of some needs that they have with the city of Atlanta, and they're working very closely together to be able to do some things there. And many of us know about Louisville and their county government, regional government, basically, and what they're doing out there. And they've done some pretty positive things. King County out in Seattle, Washington is doing some great things, as well as Hennepin County out in Minnesota. So we really did some drilling down to look at some of the best practices that are out there with those counties and see how we could possibly bring some of those things back here to our county. As I said earlier too, as we talked about best practices in the other counties, there are things that our county has won best practices for as well. And these are some of the things that we have been recognized at the county, which we think are really great things, and we want to enhance upon the great things that we have done in our county, and at the same time pick up some of the things that other counties have done in a positive way and bring them into the mix here as well. We continue to dialogue on our recommendations. Our workshop, we're still meeting. I think we had a meeting today at 3 o'clock where we're taking our recommendations. September 3rd, we have to be ready to turn our recommendations back over to the lead organization in the county reform. And we're pretty much well along the way. The 5 workday sessions I talked about earlier, the first session was on attracting and retaining talent, and I can tell you there was a very lively discussion on some of the things that we need to do to keep our talent in the county. And so we're hopefully, by the time you get our recommendations, that you will be, take them under real consideration and think about what we're trying to accomplish in that light. The second day, it was on the educational attainment level and inclusion and in creating quality places to live, work, and play. And then we went on and on and on with it. But we're at the point now where we're about to complete our recommendations and get them turned in. The first drafts were due yesterday, and I can tell you they have started coming in. I saw 2 on my computer this morning. So we're trying to get that done. We have another meeting coming up August 27th, but our deliverables are due to the county September 3rd, and we're working very diligently to be able to get our paper together, for the transition team leadership and then the new county exec when he's ready to take his office. With that, that concludes where we're at this point. And I guess at the conclusion, we're all going to stick around to answer whatever questions that we might be able to answer. And once again, I'd like to thank you for having me. And on behalf of our co-chairs, Sharon Sobel-Jordan and Harry Kennard, have a good evening.
We will now move into the public comment phase of our meeting. Just a few ground rules that we'd like to cover with you before we jump into the session. We would ask you, if you care to give a comment or pose a question, to start out by stating your name. If you are running for office, we would ask that you make that known as well, and certainly what district or what position you're running for. We're asking for no more than 2 minutes of question/commentary per person, because we do want to get out of here by 11 o'clock. And we do have a timekeeper. Linda will give you the 1-minute sign when you're when you've reached that point. So please keep an eye out for Linda, and we'll stay on track. We believe that everyone should have an opportunity to speak at least once before we start with the second round of questions, so we will certainly make sure that you have that opportunity. We also ask that you focus your comments or your questions on the work of either the economic development or the human capital work groups. Sometimes we've had audience members that want to kind of talk about other committees or the work of the broader executive committee. We really don't want to put that burden on our panelists tonight because they have their areas of focus that they've just outlined. And finally, again, watch for the timekeeper. I would be remiss if I didn't remind you, I told you I'd do this at least 3 times. This is just the second time I'll say, please take the time to complete the survey or write down any comments or recommendations that you think this process should be aware of. So with that, I guess we can jump right into questions/comments. And you simply raise your hand. I will be happy to call on you and take it away.
All right, thank you. Hi, my name is William Tarter. In the interest of full disclosure, I am on the Public Engagement Subcommittee, and one of my interests is in the attraction and retaining of young talent, and recognizing that economic development is inherently tied to human capital with the retention of young adults and having jobs here for them. I'd like to direct my question towards the gentleman from the Human Capital Work Group concerning your findings about young adults, in particular recent college graduates, mid-20s. First question is, were there members, young adults, that were present on your committee, or did you reach out to young adults from the community? If so, what did you find? What were their thoughts? I am finding a high number of organizations that work with young adults, and to the extent possible that I can help provide any type of feedback, I would love the opportunity to do that. But also kind of going forward into the new government, what do you see the role of young adults and young professionals in the community, and how they fit in with this new county government? Thank you.
Let me answer the last question first. Stability, sustainability for our county. We're going to need young people to stay here or move here and be a part of what's taking place in the county as we move toward the future. The first part of your question, as far as the committee makeup was concerned, I think we might have had, not on the committee, but participating in the room, there may have been a couple people in their very early 20s. I do know that one person was a student at Cleveland State. She raised a question, and she did say that she was from Cleveland State. While we reached out because we advertised on the website. Well, I should say advertised. We posted on the website. What we were about, what we were doing, the charge of our committee, and we were reaching out to the community for participation with what we were working on, what we were trying to accomplish. So that was the gateway in. If there was someone that had recommendations of people, personally I called a number of the people to get them to be a part of our committee or the work group, and to help us as we move forward. Because we knew that, and what we were trying to do, we wanted a good cross-section of the community. We wanted seniors, we wanted, the baby boomers, we wanted the millennials, we wanted the Generation Xers, because they all have a stake at what's going to take place here in their community. So we wanted that. Now, while we may not have gotten a large number, we did have some participation from young people in the community, and we thought it was very important, for them to participate, because that's the future. And we talk about our brain drain. We need to have a brain gain, and we start with what we have today. We start by not letting them get away. We talked about, creating programs that's geared specifically to going out and doing the things necessary to attract, retain number one, and then attract number two, young people, to this county, because it's going to be very important for them to be here and be a part of what's going on here. And that's how we look at it.
If I could follow up on that, let me start by introducing myself, since I didn't present. Tom Fitzpatrick. I'm an economist at the Federal Reserve, here on behalf of Sandy Pianalto. And the views expressed here today are my own and not necessarily those of the Federal Reserve. Now, that said, William, I think that was a really great question. And a couple things I'd point you to. The Boston Fed did a study on resurgent cities. And one of the interesting things they found in there is if you looked at depressed cities sort of across the country, the metropolitan statistical areas, those that sort of grew out of that tended to retain 18 to 22-year-olds at a higher rate than those that didn't. So in that sense, especially retaining youth is important because they become tomorrow's middle class, and that drives tax revenues, that drives economic growth. And another is Stuart Rosenthal is an economist at Syracuse, and he did a study recently about what attracts young people to different demographic areas, and he looked particularly at quality of life versus the availability of jobs. And while both were important, he found the availability of jobs is really what drives young people to relocate.
Thank you, Mr. Fitzpatrick. I was hoping you'd introduce yourself, so you beat me to the punch. Next question. Yes, sir.
My name's Joe Gross, resident of Westlake. I'm not running for anything. I've never run for anything. I have no intention to run for anything. So I have a question for economic development. You mentioned earlier that the state of Ohio has a charter, or whatever the term was, to run economic development. It's never given it to the state, to the county. So the question is, if they've never given it to the county, but the county has an economic development department now, I assume. So I'd like to know what it is and what it's doing. And then in terms of the new county that's coming and the program and the committee recommendations, who's, number one, going to be the chief economic development responsibility? And number two, what do you see the new organization looking like? And how's it going to integrate and function with all the other duplicate economic development agencies that are out there, with all the various cities? City of Westlake has one, Rocky River has one. How are you going to solve that so we can finally become a region that's pulling in one direction?
Are you
Just
Did you get all that?
So you want to know about the mandate to run economic of the economic development mandate? Who's going to be responsible?
I'd like to know what's here in place now, since apparently we've taken upon ourselves to create something that the state of Ohio didn't give us the right to do, according to your, if I understood your initial comment.
Let me explain that comment. What I hope you understood me to say is that economic development was not a statutory mandate for the county.
Okay.
It was a passive activity that the county entered into over a series of years, really a series of decades, from tepidly to a little more involved, and now you're at the tipping point to where it's either you're going to be in or you're going to be out. And the charter said, let's be in. So now it has a primary mandate to engage itself in economic development, which then brings me to a part of your question, and that is alignment of resources and activities. Part of what our report hopefully will do is to identify external alignments that is activities or entities that are outside of the county's direct management or leadership capability, as well as internal alignment, and those are things that are within the county's leadership and legislative capability. So, and when you look at external, we're not sure all of the time what's external and what's internal, but we tend to believe that if it's called the Cuyahoga whatever, it probably should be an internal activity that the county government should have the primary leadership and visioning, accountability and responsibility for. If it's outside of that range of activities, then that's something that the county and those entities will have to work on creating a collaborative relationship so that those resources, those ideas, and that particular economic territory can be optimized by both county and the external sources. What does the county do now? The county has a Department of Economic Development. Within that department is a bunch of programs, and I don't know them all, but I'll give you a flavor of them. They have something called CDG. It's a block grant program, which is the administration of federal dollars. They have a weatherization program, which helps houses that are energy inefficient become more efficient. They have brownfield programs, which allow them to help, but for the county investment or for a public body's investment, a business will not build on a land that they have to pay twice for. That is, when you gotta buy it, then you gotta clean it up. So when you have land that is contaminated, it has a double whammy because it's there, it's going to be there, but why should I, a new person who did not create the problem, go into my own monies to clean that up? Well, we found that they won't do it, and so you have to have public money in order to do that. And so the brownfield program is very effective, and in the last couple of years, I'm assuming that they probably dealt with more than $15 to $20 million, probably in excess of that, because they've levered that with other funds and resources throughout the country. There was one more item, and I can't remember. Oh, the leadership of the department. That's something that we're not going to recommend a person. What we're trying to do is to recommend a structure that will allow this new county emphasis on economic development to be optimally managed, optimally staffed, and then managed. We can't tell them who to hire because we weren't given that assignment, and what we are trying to do though is to appoint or to place accountability and responsibility on some clearly identifiable positions and therefore people. And we want to make certain that those positions and people have both the authority and the responsibility for carrying out the missions that we believe should properly now be a part of the county government.
Great, thank you for the question. Next question.
Hi, my name is Kathy Lobby, and first I have a comment. Not so much for you, but I was at the Mount Sinai meeting last week, and at 75th and Woodland, there were a lot more attendees than there are here in Westlake, which does not make me real thrilled about my hometown. The organization I work with had a job fair today, and 1,000 people turned out for jobs. There is a stereotypical idea that there's a lot of people who don't want to work or want to get taken care of. There are a ton of people in Cleveland that I see every day that are looking for work, that are dying to work. And I think if people that don't live in Westlake or Solon or Brecksville get more involved and be more helpful, it's going to become like a rash, and it's going to spread throughout the whole county. So I hope that our people get together and help with the county government. I know you have to wait until the executive committee goes through all the recommendations and everything. I'm on another committee. Is there going to be a representation to the state of Ohio to help lower taxes, to help the small businessman with this health bill, to help get through everything so that we can attract more businesses to this area?
Well, as far as communicating to the state of Ohio, one thing I'll say is that that's a little bit beyond what we've been asked to do as members of the transition advisory work groups. However, there's nothing to stop the incoming county executive from going to the state of Ohio and requesting or trying to work with them to encourage regionalism, to encourage working together. But as far as going to the state of Ohio, that's beyond my pay grade.
during our committee sessions, I have to agree, when it came to the state, while we get monies for different things from the state, it never came up in our conversations where we would go in that direction to try and get something. But we do know the state makes dollars available for workforce development and things of that nature. And so we're hopeful that to that end, that when we take these dollars, we make sure that we are inclusive as possible in getting people trained, because we have a ton of people in our county, or a ton of organizations in our county doing workforce training, and they're training, and a lot of people are not being placed. And so what you created is false hope with people, and they do want to work. I've not experienced anywhere where people did not want to work and want to just live off a system. They want to work, and we're hopeful that with some of the recommendations that we've made to change the way some of the stuff is taking place, that it will help. I'd love to go to the state and see if we can lower some taxes. If we lower some taxes, I'll hire some more people. But we'll see how things come out with the recommendations.
Thank you.
I just wanted to, if I may, interject one critical point that Mr. Coleman alluded to earlier, which is the structure of this committee. We could have easily designed just an economic development committee that would be focused on the high-end economic development kinds of assignments, which include, business attraction and, preparing for the 21st century economy, and a lot of heady 30,000-foot kinds of things. And if you talk to economists, the way economies are evaluated and tracked, and there's just 100 different ways that you can do it, and it can become quite academic. And I applaud this particular work group because it was understood that it can't just be about the new exciting sector, the technology sector, the bioscience sector. Those are fast-growing sectors in Northeast Ohio. But I think our group had the wherewithal to realize that unless we figure out what to do with the people that in many cases, as Mr. Coleman alluded to, don't necessarily have that level of education based on a number of challenges and barriers that come with living in urban communities, we should figure out a way to ensure that they too are involved in this process. So that's why we have a human capital quality places, kind of a spin-off work group working side by side with the economic development work group, because that's the only way that we ensure that as we look down the road at where our economy is headed, that we're also looking at ways that we can ensure that every citizen has an opportunity to not only just land a job, but land a job that has promise and potential for growth and prosperity. Yes, sir.
My name is Dave Greenspan. I am running for County Council here in District 1 over here in Westlake. I do appreciate Mr. Coleman pointing out Fulton County and DeKalb County as having a very proactive economic development program. I actually was a beneficiary of that, serving on the inaugural city council, the largest city in the country ever to incorporate the second largest city in the Atlanta area. We actually had a different issue going on in Fulton County where we had businesses coming in and we were actually having to manage our growth, unlike the turnaround situation we have going on here in Cuyahoga County. So I appreciate you looking at them because it is a success story of what's happened in the Atlanta metro area. When I moved there in 1990, we only had 2 million people in Atlanta. There are 6 million now. They're going to be 7.5 million in the Atlanta metro area in the next 10 years. So basically the Cuyahoga County population transplanting itself to the Atlanta metro area with a very proactive economic development group. My question is, though, unrelated to that, but related to a comment you made about efficiencies in government. Is this group going to make a recommendation to your reporting entity and then ultimately on to the new county council on which areas it has evaluated redundancies in government, which departments, which areas should be eliminated or consolidated, and if so, what might that look like?
I can't tell you what it'll look like at the end of the day, but one of the things that we did look at is redundancy, and we are going to make recommendations on whether or not to eliminate an agency or organization or group within the county structure, whether or not this group is doing a fantastic, wonderful job and it should stay, or whether you need to put two groups together and have a better efficiency. Those are some of the things that we're making recommendations on. And like I said, they're recommendations. We don't know whether the county exec or the county council will adopt them, but we are looking for those kind of things. We're looking for better ways to spend the county's dollar and bring about those efficiencies that you talk about. There are recommendations that we're making.
Can I interject something? I'm with the Procurement Public Works Committee, and we're looking at, regionalism was a huge topic in all of the subcommittees because we feel as taxpayers that we could share a lot of services, from print shops to vehicle repair to, it could be anything, road repair, bridges. So I think every subgroup looked at that and is somehow going to bring it to regionalism in their proposals. Thank you.
Yes, before you ask your question, you're correct. One of the things that we had in our work group to work with was the President's Council study on regionalism, and it had a lot of great things in that study that we looked at, and it was regionalism from an equitable standpoint, which was very important as well.
My name is Casey Armstrong, and I just would like to know, within each committee's final report, will it include a timeline for the new county council? Did you guys kind of prioritize? Because if I remember correctly, our council serves for 4 years, and then there's 2-year term limit, so everything I get cannot happen in 4 years. So what will be the priorities that we start off with?
Yeah, in fact, the reporting template requires that under each recommendation, we talk about whether it's a first day recommendation, whether it's a phase 1, phase 2, etc. So everything will be recommended in order of priority.
Ray?
Yes, my name is Ray Rosenberger. I am also a member of the Public Engagement Subcommittee. I'd like to, if we could for a moment, imagine that your recommendations have been put into place, and in fact some of them will impact the upcoming projects, 2 major projects that I can think of. One is the Medical Mart, and the other is the proposed casino for Cleveland. How, if your recommendations were in place, how are they going to play out?
Well, for ours, it's difficult to imagine that they've been put in place with the projects already underway, because ours, the Economic Development Committee, is more about how you evaluate projects, how you decide what to do, and then how they're executed. So since they're already underway, it's too late for us to be involved in that sense. Again, it's more on the planning side, the project selection, and then implementation. So as implemented, there wouldn't be differences going forward.
From our standpoint, we looked at workforce development. What do we need to do to train individuals for jobs in the casino? We want to keep those jobs here, as many of those jobs as we possibly can. The Medical Mart, what type of talent from an employment standpoint are you looking for to work in the convention center, work in the Medical Mart, getting people trained to be able to perform those duties. From a racial and economic inclusion standpoint, how do we make sure that we have participation from all segments of our community to participate in the construction jobs as well as the jobs in the service sector once those facilities are completed. We want to make sure that county residents participate on those facilities in the construction at a very high level. We want to make sure the city residents participate on those jobs in a very high level. And those are two points that we've talked about on our committee. How do we make sure the residents of this county participate in full capacity on those projects and keeping those dollars within our community?
Thank you. I think there's another new question here.
Dennis Colley from Westlake. Government costs money, and a lot of people already think taxes are too high. So I haven't heard anything about how you plan to measure your effectiveness. In other words, you're investing a certain amount of taxpayer dollars in doing what you're doing. Is it going to be, is there a method of measuring effectiveness, and is there a method of adjusting what you do instead of just creating another bureaucracy that's just going to continuously grow?
The answer to your question is there are mechanisms for measuring effectiveness, and we hope that those will be implemented. It will be our recommendation that measurement and be a part of the process, but also that the expected benefit or the return on investment also be identified up front so that you know what you're looking for to measure the performance criteria against. It's difficult to, we weren't in the budgetary process, and we don't anticipate getting into that. So when Mr. Coleman talks about redundancies, those are areas where you would expect some dollar reductions to take place. But he also indicated that they looked at the 2009 and the 2010 budget, and I think if you looked at the two numbers he put up, the 2009 was about $550 million, the 2010 is about $535 million. So even before the government gets in, it's starting to shrink its tax appetite, and it's our expectation that that activity will continue as the county sort of gets the idea that it has a finite source of revenues.
In addition to the metrics upfront selection, we also recommend that there'll be evaluations annually of the projects that have been implemented, so we see whether or not the benefits that accrued were similar to the benefits that were projected.
I'm sorry, I forgot to ask, a part of my question is, how soon will the public have access to the reports that you submit to the transition team? Will we have access to those final reports?
Joe can answer that question.
The way it's been working out is that the reports as they're presented to the executive committee, there's dates that are set out that I don't know off the top of my head, but the work groups are presenting to the executive committee. Soon after that, those what we're calling draft recommendations are put up on the website. And they're marked as such because it's important to note that it's the first time the executive committee's hearing those reports too, and they need time to vet them and go through them as well.
And those will happen, those sessions will be happening periodically over the next few weeks.
Through the middle of September, I believe. There's various dates set.
Right.
And those will be, if they're not already, they'll be posted on the website. I just don't know them off the top of my head.
Boards and commissions is up right now?
Yep. And
Code of ethics.
And code of ethics.
Right.
They presented last year.
And they are drafts, but they're up on there.
Yes, please.
Hi, Betty Sislak. I live here in Westlake, and I've attended quite a few of the economic development work group meetings, but my question has to do with budget dollars for economic development. I recall at one of the meetings, Commissioner Peter Lawson-Jones was at the meeting and indicated that so much of the county's budget was already predisposed to entitlement programs, mandated programs by the federal government, by the state government, and that there was really a very small portion that could be utilized for economic development. What's going to be the recommendation in terms of how much of that little available amount of cash that the county will have would be towards economic development groups, and within that, how much of that is going to go for job training and the various categories, and how have you prioritized? Is that part of your recommendations?
So we're not getting into, again, budgetary specifics. Part of the reason why there's so little discretionary dollars in economic development currently is because, again, there wasn't a mandate to create an economic development department. What's happened is sort of organically grown slowly over time. And as far as dollars spent on workforce training and things like that, some of the dollars that are committed already do go to different types of services such as those. But one of the big challenges coming in for the county executive is going to be to figure out how they're going to fund their economic development mandate and where those dollars will come from. And I can't tell you how they're going to do it, but I can tell you that that candidates, some of the executive candidates, on their websites I've gone through and looked, and they do have some plans for how they would come up with economic development dollars. But as far as us, we're not recommending specific budget amounts be
Are
allocated.
you recommending prioritization of any areas within economic development for those budget dollars that they're going to come up with?
In some sense, yes.
We're recommending that the economic development activities be focused on things that can have demonstrable potential for leverage within our community. Remember, we're looking at trying to retain existing jobs, expand jobs, and then also attract. So in that attention, retention, and attraction, I guess, role of how things happen, there will be priorities that will come up. And unfortunately, they will have to make daily decisions on what to do with the precious dollars they have. Hopefully, they will have a strategic sense for niches that they want to do things in. Let's say in education, it may make sense that as we look at the labor force, that education and workforce need to look at creating more craftsmen in order to handle with local people the dollars of construction that will be going forward. It may be that when we look at the hospitality industry, you may need to have a program that creates a higher level of culinary skills than currently exist in the community. As the casino business hopefully attracts high and low end people, the taste, the dining taste will change. So do we have enough of those critical mass jobs here to make that a reality and a success? We don't know, and we can't really tell them what to do in that sort of futuristic world.
I can tell you in our group, there were some recommendations made that did not have dollars associated with them that we thought were of a high priority for the betterment of our county. And we're just hopeful that once we pass them on to economic development, that they will view them as a priority as well and put some dollars with them.
Yes.
My name is Madeline Brookshire. I'm a resident of North Olmsted, and I'm not running for any office. Is there anything in your list of recommendations that will ensure that business stays here in Cuyahoga County? For example, that county businesses get priority status in bids or projects, so that we're not always seeing architects from Chicago and New York coming in, and our own local architects who may be quite talented are looked at as inferior, and we think these other folks are glamorous. How are we going to ensure that people who live here, pay taxes here, and earn their living here get some kind of a treatment where they're not guaranteed the work, but are looked at in a better light than they currently have been?
Lana Coleman,
I don't know if I said that well.
You just found your new best friend, right?
I've been fighting that battle for a long time. Now, while it didn't come up in our committee, I thought maybe it would be in the procurement committee that it would come up in. But and Lee is saying that it did as well. But that has been an ongoing theme here in our county, and we have to find a way to change that, because we are losing our businesses to out-of-town companies that have come in, architectural firms have come in, open up an office, put a telephone in, not even a person, win the contract, do the job, and take the tax dollars and everything, with them. It doesn't work, and we have to find ways to change that. We've been fighting that battle for a long time, and we've been beating our heads against the wall. And so I'm hopeful that if it's been recommended in the procurement committee, that they move to do something with that. It hasn't come up in our committee because that's not been one of our, it hasn't been one of our charges.
It's been, there's been some special interest groups. While their interests are very important, such as a business owner, minority programs, everything. There's so much that has to be fixed with the county right now that those are taking a little bit of a lower step. That's my own personal opinion. They are important, and they are on everybody's recommendation list, but there's some other things of how the government's gonna just generally operate that first year that it probably won't be addressed until the second year, but it is an important issue.
And though we don't deal with it directly in economic development, we do emphasize that the retention of jobs, of local businesses, has the same economic effect as the attraction of new jobs. If you're going to lose, if you don't retain it and you lose it, it's the same thing as not being able to pull someone in. So we do emphasize the importance of retaining our businesses.
Does that finish our first round? Did everyone have their first chance to speak? Okay, we can open up a second round. Yes, sir.
Yeah, I don't know if these committees have dealt with this. Probably you have to find out. Obviously, we've read a lot in the papers about right-sizing the county and comparing Allegheny County, which seems to have the same population as Cuyahoga County, yet they have 1/2 the number of county employees. I don't know if the committees, if there have been any of the committees have been chartered to see what unnecessary needs exist in the county today and what we're going to look at and where those recommendations are going to come from to try to make this county a little bit more realistic in terms of what it should be providing.
That's not a subject that we address. I think that's a human resource.
Well, I don't know. I'm asking a question if you can't answer.
Well, from human capital and quality services, from our standpoint, we just looked at the various agencies that are within the county. We were looking for redundancies, whether we can merge, agencies, or whether we need an agency or not. And we didn't look at it from a people standpoint. That we just kept it at that level, and whatever recommendations we made would be up to the groups over us that will have to take that forward. But that we just looked at it from an agency level and not a people standpoint.
I would invite you, sir. Our very last forum will be September 13th in downtown Cleveland, and we will have the Human Resources Work Group actually report out.
Are they making those recommendations?
I'm not sure yet, but clearly.
I know a little bit about what they're doing. I know they are looking at some of the redundancies as it relates to merging, the other elected offices into one. So there are certain areas, as in HR administration and things like that, where you will likely see a merging of services. But the other thing I know that they've looked at and identified is when you mention other counties, it's always important to make accurate apples to apples comparisons, because for example, Allegheny County, if you just look at it from the perspective of number of employees, it's not accurate, because for example, all of their engineer's office employees and I believe all of their social workers are actually state employees. So it's important to know how things are structured.
Ohio, Hamilton, or
no, and that's a better comparison. Yes. So there are some of those things coming out of that group.
But we are going to see some of those recommendations.
Yes. And if you can't make that meeting, as was mentioned earlier, all of the preliminary draft reports will also be on the website. So if you stay tuned to that, you can read and follow it that way as well. Will, did you have a
Yes.
I was just going to, I'm Carol Frederick, and I was just going to clarify a lot of states, including Pennsylvania, have state-run child welfare systems that the local workers are state employees. And obviously, we have a child welfare system that has a number of employees, but in Ohio, it's county-driven. And any direct service the county provides, another county might do that by purchasing it. They still spend money on it.
You're right.
So you can't just compare employees.
Right.
Right.
So,
Thank you for that clarification. Will, you ready?
Yes, thank you very much. William Tarter again. Just out of curiosity for Mr. Coleman, about the counties that have been researched. I'm very interested in, without getting into the details of what your findings are, and again, I'm very interested in young adults and how other cities and other counties are engaging their young people. I've seen many cities that are going about different ways of attracting and retaining young people, and just want to know if that's something that's currently being researched in your work group.
Yes, that is being researched. There was one county we talked about, I can't recall the name, since we went through so many of them, that they do something monthly to like a monthly party, and they'll go to a lounge or something. They'll have an event for young people to come to the event, and then what they're trying to do is bring heads of organizations into these events as well, where young people can get to interact and meet some of the organizations, some of the major employers in their community that are hiring and what have you. But they try and do something on a monthly basis. They know it's about jobs in many cases, but there are all kind of things taking place. But we are really, really looking at that seriously. That's one of the recommendations that we've made for this attraction and retention of young talent that has no money associated with it. But we think it's so important that the Economic Development Group and the higher-ups would put some dollars to it, so that we can move forward. But there are a lot of different things that are taking place out there. So we are looking at some of the ways that they're doing it, and we like to incorporate some of those ways here into our county as well.
He's working you over pretty good, Lee.
You should have been in our sessions. Use your talent.
Other questions, comments? I would like to, oh yes, sure, absolutely. Please do.
Okay, I'm Judy Rose here, a Westlake resident. I'm going to be specific, and I'm narrowing in on a certain area. But Mr. Coleman, could you give a couple of specific ideas on what you intend, or what you're throwing out for improving the educational system?
We didn't get into the improvement of the educational systems. If you're talking about the schools, that wasn't the charge. We got into workforce development and how the individuals are being trained and what they're being trained in, and how we go about that training and getting the real benefits to be able to gain a job based on the training. Vocational training, so to speak. We're starting to get more and more involved in the vocational training. At one time, it was a lot of college preparatory training, send kids off to college and things of that nature. Which is really great, but there are jobs out here that may not require a full college education, maybe some college, high school diploma, to be able to function and be a meaningful participant in this county. And we looked at things in that nature. Now, yes, our educational system in high school maybe needs some tweaking and some changing to become better, but we didn't want to go in that direction. But we were looking basically at the workforce training for those individuals that maybe out of high school, maybe need a GED or gain a vocational skill to be able to land some of the jobs that are out there in this area. Now, that's not to say that college education and those kind of things, the colleges and universities and the students that graduate, it's not important, it's very important. But our concern was there's a whole community of unemployed out there that really need to get some type of training to be a participant in what this new government hopefully will bring to this total community, and that's what we're looking at.
Did you look at any particular types of programs and which ones were more successful than others, and will that be in your recommendations?
Well, what happened was we had a number of individuals from the workforce development side that participated in what the organization was doing, or they were getting county dollars already. And so there was great participation from those individuals there. We hadn't looked at who was more successful than the other one. We looked at specifically, you know, we need to get people trained to be able to garner jobs. What kind of jobs are going to be coming down the road in the future? And we see some in the casinos. We see jobs like that. We see jobs coming back somewhat in manufacturing. What do we need to do? How do we looked at the dollars that were going to the various areas, and how may we redirect some of those dollars to maybe these kind of programs, because green jobs is the thing. Who's doing green job training? We don't have anyone training for green job skills. And that's what we kind of looked at and made our recommendations forward, on.
I've got one more question. That Carol Frederick, we work with very low-income people, and 25% of the residents of Cleveland have no source of transportation. So as the economic development, the human capital looked at, we can help people find jobs and then they have no way to get to them. We're trying to provide them old used bikes so they can get to a job. But getting out to places like Westlake from downtown is not easy to do. Has there been some look at the lack of funding for transportation or addressing that issue?
Yeah, well, that was the transportation bullet that we had up there, because we know as as companies move further and further away from your transportation lines, it's difficult to get people out there to these jobs. And one of the participants in our work group was Joe Calabrese, the head of RTA, very active, in our group, because he knows how important transportation is. And when you talk about low income, it's a whole different set of requirements in many cases. Be able to get them from maybe the core area out to Seoul and out to Westlake where the jobs are. So that's a very important piece of what we're doing. And Joe had some ideas, some really great ideas, as how RTA can do things to make it more possible and better serve the community when it comes to transportation.
One other thing I'll add is Mr. Trotter started out talking about some of the early work of the Economic Development Committee, and one of the first things that they did was ask all interested parties to read the Brookings Institute Restoring Prosperity report, which is really a fine model, I think, for any city in the country to consider. But oddly enough, 2 of the 4 areas of focus of that particular report are human capital and transportation. So they've looked at, and this study was done really on the state of Ohio and metropolitan areas within the state of Ohio. So some of that guided even the discussion to look at transportation, look at human capital. And if you haven't read it, it's probably still on the website. But that would be a real good read to kind of see some of the best thinking that we have tried to, in some respects, emulate with this process.
And if I can add, if you get an opportunity or chance, on the President's Council website at presidentscouncil.com, in their study on regionalism, there's a great section on transportation and the urban core. You might want to take a look at that.
Yes, sir.
I have to run. I do apologize, and I want to say this to you individually afterwards, but having sat in your seat and been on these transition advisory groups before in previous capacity back in Atlanta, first of all, I don't think anybody here understands that to serve these committees how much time and dedication it takes for you guys to volunteer and do the job you do. And I want to thank you for that. I want to do it personally. I do have to run to another engagement, but I just want everybody to understand the folks, the time that they put in, clearly is a love of, is a passion to help serve our community, and I want to thank you.
Other questions? Yeah, I think, yeah, right. Mr. Trotter said that was the benediction. So. Well, I have just a couple of closing comments. Again, we will take this information back to the work groups. I'm sure all parties here heard some good information and comments that they'll take back. We will continue to post meetings of not only the forums, but some of you seem to be interested in the report outs that the executive committee is starting to consider, so please stay on top of that and follow those. If you haven't already, please complete the feedback form, the one-page exit survey form, And where should they drop that off? Is there a box or?
It's right on the desk.
Right on the desk. You can just lay it right on the desk. We really want to, again, get your feedback. Again, we've talked a lot about the website. You see it listed here, charter@cuyahogacounty.us. It really is a very well done website. Lots of information. Pretty much anything you want to know about the process is there. And finally, your ongoing engagement in the process is critical. That's why we've coordinated these forums, and it's always good to see so many of you here. Thank you for your participation, and have a safe drive home and a wonderful rest of the summer. Thank you.